Hello, guys. So today I'm going to be talking about something that has been a huge problem to the community and a lot of people still don't fully understand. What exactly is counterattacking a player? Counterattacking is when, for example, you try to penetrate someone and because they have a higher reflex, they leave with the ball. Now the thing is, a lot of people don't actually know the relation. All they know is higher reflex equal better. I want reflex. Reflex is life. Yes and no. There's actually a very precise equation how reflex works. And having 100,000 reflex or 5,000 reflex could sometimes make no difference whatsoever on the outcome of the fight. So again, I'm doing this because a lot of people were understanding why they were getting reflex and why sometimes it just wasn't working. So first of all, the equation for reflex is your reflex minus the enemy's reflex. So let's say in the case of my Metatron, I have 1,492 reflex. If the enemy were to have 1,000 reflex, for this equation we would use 492. And then you're going to divide this again by 10. And this means that I have 49.2% chance of counterattacking someone with 1,000 reflex. It's an extremely linear rule. The only thing is that it's capped at 65%. So it's something very important to understand, especially when you're endgame doing the high reflex lines. But what this means is the maximum difference that is actually valuable to have between your line and the enemy line is 650 reflex, equivalent to a 65% chance. So again, having huge numbers in reflex won't give you anything. And as I said, it was the difference between your reflex and the opponent's reflex. So any skill that is going to reduce the enemy's reflex is going to be insanely valuable. For example, on Metatron, her Mercy and Insanity, whose reflex has now been up to 30%, as they've been removing every other buff she has. So in the end, this has slowly started getting better and better. So at the end, you do this comparison. But now you're going to tell me, well, I don't understand. My Metatron has 9,000 reflex and Curl just doesn't care. And that's for a simple reason. He has counterattack resistance. It's right here. We call it CR. It's the longest stat and name in the game. So what does that actually do? In base rule, it's going to say there's a lower chance you're going to get counterattacked when using this. Now, in an actual mathematical rule, you need to know that counterattack resistance has been capped out at 90%. So what you're going to say, oh, so I have a 10% chance of being countered. No, it's not exactly that. The formula is going to be very simple. It's going to be your chance of reflexing a player, multiplied by the chance of not reflexing them. I'm going to write down the equations in the comments below, but it's basically percent of chance of counterattack times 100 minus counterattack resistance. So again, this will be put down in the comments below. But all you need to know is that counterattack has been capped at 90%. So you can no longer remain immortal to counterattacks. So this is kind of frustrating because a lot of lines had started using that strategy. For passives on stones, there is no longer the possibility to obtain counterattack resistance, from my understanding. It used to be much more popular in the old days. The chance of getting it nowadays is basically at the level of a bug. So you're not going to be finding it in passives. And this is why stones who their main passive is to have counterattack resistance are now extremely important, especially the dark speed stones, a few reflex stones have stuff like that. So this is something that you're going to try to look for when you have certain players of counterattack resistance. Again, the cap at 90 is very important. So what this means is, imagine that your player has no reflex and he's hitting a Metatron with 100,000 reflex. Let's make this a little bit disproportionate. And your character has a 90% counterattack resistance. He will only be countered at approximately 6.5% chance. So countering is something that's based on two stats. And again, the really important thing is you only need a difference of 650 reflex. And again, this is going to work when you attack or when you're getting attacked. If you're getting attacked and they give you the ball, you don't get an extra turn unless they're taken out. And if you're penetrating and stealing and they have the ball and you pass through, you get an extra turn. So just in case that wasn't clear, action bar wise, what happens. So I hope this helps people understand exactly what we're looking for in reflex and why half the time your player is alive, yet some people just walk away with the ball. Again, the smaller the gap in reflex, the smaller the chance that they're going to one-hit you. They're usually going to take the ball and you're going to be left with 1 life point. If my math is correct, I think it was under 400 difference. But again, there's a bunch of other stats who matter on that one, a lot of the damage reduction. So that might be a little bit more complicated. But again, 650 is the max. Counter-attack resistance, the cap has been changed to 90%. And basically, you can never get lower than 6% if you're being completely out-reflexed. So I hope this helps people understand why reflex is important and why players like Metatron are actually so popular because of a huge base technique. I'd like to point out mine is Superb Zero, and she's at 1,500 reflex, and she's not even stoned properly. So a lot of these players can be extremely strong on a reflex front. Or you can build a counter-attack resistant front and have something like 10% chance to be countered. But you could also KO them on your hit, so it's not that big a deal. So have a good day.